For your grayscales, you're going to complete two grayscales, which are what I call optical grayscales that use size, proportion, and scale and ratio of black and white to replicate what a blended grayscale looks like. And the other two are what I would call accumulative, which would be similar to crosshatching, in which you start with a sparse quantity of whatever object or mark that you're using, and it will slowly increase until it appears to go dark. Once you have created these grayscales, there's a way in Photoshop that you can determine whether or not they are actually matching with the official grayscale. So to do this, I'm going to come up to the toolbar and grab the rectangular marquee tool, this little dotted rectangle here. And let me start with, I'm going to start with this middle grayscale because I want to talk about proportion for a second. This is your middle gray. It's a 9-step scale, so your number 5, if 1 is white and 9 is black, your number 5 is your middle gray. So proportion-wise, in this optical scale, 50% of my square is black and 50% of my square is white. Now when you're doing a more complex scale, it's going to become more difficult to tell what is 50-50, but you need to do your best to analyze it and determine, and this is also going to help you hone your visual acuity to figure ground and really looking at size, proportion, positive, negative space. So taking this very basic split in half, 50-50, in Photoshop, if I select it, and I need to make sure that I am on the layer that value scale is on. So here I have my template that you'll be given, and then I've already put my 4 value scales in here. So this is the layer that it's on, so I select that, and then I select this square, and then I go up to Filter, Blur, Average. So again, that's Filter, Blur, Average. And when I click on that, keep your eye on the square. And you see that it averaged it almost as though it was mixing an equal portion of black and white paint. Black and white paint is a little bit different because sometimes there's different pigment strengths, but let's say the black and white had the exact same pigment strength, then this is what it would look like. Now on this scale, if this is 50%, and this is our so-called 0%, then halfway between the 0 and 50 would be 25. So you can see here that I've taken a quarter of this area and filled it with black. So let's see if that worked. Again, I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Average. But I also want you to note that if whatever was the last filter that you used will appear up here at the top. Now, if you had done Filter, Blur, Average, and then you had used a different filter, this would change. But since we're only going to be using the Blur Average, note the hotkey here, which is Command F. So now I can more quickly just go up here and click on Average, and then I'll just click off of that to deselect. Or you can always go to Select, Deselect, which is Command D. Then let's scoot down here a little bit. So if this is our 50% and this is our 100%, and I'll talk about this little bit of white in a minute, then the halfway here should be 75, and you'll notice that this one has 3/4 of it black, that's 75%, and the remaining 25 is white. So this time I'm going to do the Command F. So I'll click off of here, and on my keyboard I'm going to hit Command and then Punch F. And when I click off of that, you can see that these two are also very similar. The next one, all you need to do is think 0, 25, half of that is 12.5. So technically, if I had 100 squares in here, I would, oh, I'm sorry, 12, it's what is that, 87.5? Okay, you'll have to do the what's halfway between 75 and 100. That would be this, and I'm going to do Command F again. That's filter average, and see if that looks kind of similar. Now, the only reason why I am putting a tiny bit of white in this last one is because when you take this value scale and you use it in your portrait, let's say you have something like this scale, and all of a sudden it just goes to a black square. You have a lot of curves and a lot of rhythm, and if your white square and your black square are just solid squares, it's possible that in your portrait that square shape is going to suddenly stand out, as though you were looking at a bunch of very fluid organic trees and suddenly you saw a cube in the middle of the tree. So we just want a tiny little fleck of whatever types of shapes we're making in the previous value scales to appear at the beginning and the end. So down here where I'm looking at the accumulative scale, you can see that it's just having a little bit of whatever the texture is, might even have a little bit less than that. And here it's accumulating and it's leaving a little bit of the space in between. So I can also test out these value scales. Oops. And there I had forgotten to switch the layer. So I need to check and see which layer I'm on and move to that. And then I can go to filter average. And what this is going to tell you is before you even put these into your portrait, how trained is your eye in looking at something that's pure black and pure white? And if you squint your eyes, you can often see more clearly if it's similar in value. But this is a training exercise. What's important is not that you get it perfect in the beginning, okay? I've been doing this for a while, so I guesstimated, and looks like I'm doing okay so far. I'm close. What you want to see is that the scale is similar to the one in the template and that it's progressing from light to dark. Now up here at the top is this lettered scale, and I just pulled this off the internet. I don't even know if this person was trying to do an absolutely perfect optical scale. But if I analyze this one, oops, again, I forgot to switch layers. I'm going to go up to that layer and do Command F. And once you get the Command F down, you can just select and do Command F, and I can go a lot faster, and that's just averaging. So you notice something here. It's supposed to be progressing from light to dark, and instead it's kind of bouncing around a bit. It's progressing from dark to light and back to dark again. So if I want to go back and look at this scale, I can go into a palette called History under Window, History. And this brings up however many settings I've set in preferences. There's a place where you can set how many history levels you do. So I can kind of go back in time and see what this looked like. I can also click back a little bit faster and see what this scale looked like before I did the average. And now if I just look at this part, I would say, okay, what is there more of? Is there more black or is there more white? Is it even? This is the middle gray, so it should be even. And I think there's a little more white. And then if I go over here and I look at this one, and I know this one should be more white than black, it's actually looking pretty even. It's looking about 50%. So that might be responsible for the reason why this went from darker to lighter to darker. And then I need to go back and noodle or make changes to my original scale and try to correct those proportions now that Photoshop has helped me to see it. And then I'll bring it back into Photoshop and analyze it again. And this may be a back and forth process for a while until your eye gets trained. But it's nice to know that you have a way to actually check it before you put it into your scale. And if it works here, chances are it's going to work pretty well in your portrait.